November 1944, the Hürtgen Forest, Germany. Sergeant Jack Morrison watches his entire company walk into a German kill zone, 120 men. 3 minutes later, 11 are still breathing. Most of those are bleeding. They're surrounded by enemy forces in the densest forest on Earth, where visibility ends at 20 yards and every tree could hide a German machine gun. Morrison has a choice: try to escape with the few who can still walk, or stay with the wounded and hope rescue finds them before the Germans do. He stays. What happens in the next 5 days will prove that sometimes survival isn't about fighting. It's about refusing to die quietly. The Hürtgen Forest was a place where men went to disappear. 50 square miles of dense evergreen forest straddling the German-Belgian border. Trees so thick that daylight barely penetrated. Ravines and ridges that turned every 100 yards into its own private battlefield. Weather that shifted between freezing rain and wet snow. Mud that swallowed boots and vehicles. And German defenders who'd had months to prepare killing zones in terrain that favored defense over offense. The U.S. First Army had been trying to push through Hürtgen since September. 2 months of fighting for a forest most Americans had never heard of. The official reason was strategic: control the forest to protect the flank before pushing to the Rhine. The real reason was simpler and more brutal. The forest was there, and it had to be taken. By November, the forest had already consumed entire divisions. Regiments went in at full strength and came out as shattered remnants. The 9th Infantry Division, the 4th Infantry Division, each one fed into the grinder, each one bled until it broke. Now it was the 28th Infantry Division's turn. Sergeant Jack Morrison had been in the Army for 3 years, in combat for 14 months. He'd landed in Normandy on D-Day +3, fought through the hedgerows, pushed across France, seen things that would wake him up at night for the rest of his life. But he'd never seen anything like Hürtgen. The forest swallowed sound. Artillery could be thundering 100 yards away and you'd barely hear it through the trees. Men could be dying 50 feet from you and you'd never know. The forest isolated everyone, made every squad, every fire team feel like the only soldiers in the world. Morrison's company, Charlie Company, 110th Regiment, had been in the forest for 6 days. They'd advanced maybe 800 yards. Every yard cost blood. Machine gun nests in concrete bunkers. Artillery zeroed on every trail. Mines everywhere. Anti-personnel mines that took your foot. Anti-tank mines that took your legs. Booby traps that took whatever they could reach. The men were exhausted, cold, wet, scared, but still moving, still fighting, because that's what infantry did. They moved forward until they couldn't anymore. On November 7th, Captain Hayes called his platoon leaders together for orders. Morrison, as senior NCO for 2nd Platoon, attended. The briefing was simple, too simple. Charlie Company would advance northeast along a logging trail toward a German strongpoint identified by intelligence. Seize the position, hold it, allow follow-on forces to pass through. Morrison studied the map. Something felt wrong. The trail was too obvious, too convenient. In Hürtgen, anything convenient was usually a trap. "Sir," Morrison said carefully, "that trail's a natural kill zone. If the Germans are where we think they are, they'll have it pre-sighted for artillery and machine guns." Captain Hayes, a good officer but new to combat, replacement for the previous company commander who'd been killed 2 weeks earlier, nodded. "I understand your concern, Sergeant, but intelligence says German forces in this sector are depleted. They're pulling back. This should be a straightforward advance." Morrison didn't argue further. Intelligence had been wrong before. Intelligence didn't walk. Point through German kill zones, but orders were orders. The company moved out at 0600. 120 men in a column spread over 200 yards. 2nd Platoon in the lead, Morrison's squad at the very front. The forest pressed in immediately. Visibility dropped to 20 yards. Sound became muffled. Every man felt isolated despite being surrounded by others. They walked for 30 minutes, no contact, just mud and trees and the constant drizzle that soaked through everything. Morrison's instincts screamed at him. Too quiet, too easy. The Germans should be here, should be fighting. Where were they? The logging trail widened slightly, opened into a small clearing maybe 50 yards across. On the far side, more forest, dense and dark. Morrison raised his fist. The column stopped. He studied the clearing, scanned the tree line, saw nothing. But nothing was wrong. In Hürtgen, you always saw something, a flash of movement, a shadow. The forest was never completely empty. "Sir," Morrison said to Lieutenant Parker, 2nd Platoon's commander, "I don't like this. That clearing's too clean. I want to send scouts." The world exploded. German machine guns opened up from 3 sides, MG-42s firing at 1,200 rounds per minute. The sound was distinctive, a tearing noise, like canvas ripping. Impossible to mistake for anything else. The lead squad was caught in the open. Men went down instantly, screaming, torn apart by crossfire. Morrison threw himself behind a fallen log. Rounds chewed the wood. Splinters flew. He pressed himself into the mud and tried to process what was happening. Ambush. Classic L-shaped ambush. Machine guns on 3 sides, mortars starting to fall, artillery joining in seconds later. The Germans had let them walk right into a prepared kill zone. Captain Hayes was shouting orders, trying to organize a response. Then his voice cut off mid-sentence. Morrison looked back. Hayes was down, half his head gone. Lieutenant Parker tried to rally 2nd Platoon. "Return fire! Find cover! Move!" An artillery shell landed directly on his position. When the smoke cleared, Parker and 3 others were gone, just gone. The company disintegrated. Men tried to run, tried to fight, tried to survive. Most failed. Morrison's training took over. He couldn't stop the ambush, couldn't save the company, but he could try to save whoever was close. "On me!" he shouted. "Anyone who can move, get to me!" A few men heard, crawled toward his position. Private Tony Rizzo from Brooklyn, bleeding from his leg. Corporal Sam Williams from Alabama, holding his chest, blood seeping through his fingers. Private Danny O'Connor from Boston, clutching his face, screaming that he couldn't see. More came. 8, 9, 10, 11 men total who'd made it to Morrison's position, some wounded, some in shock, all terrified. The German fire continued, systematic, methodical, killing anything that moved. Morrison made a decision in seconds. They couldn't stay here. The Germans would sweep through and finish them. They couldn't retreat. The trail was covered by fire. They couldn't advance. Suicide. Sideways. They had to go sideways, off the trail, into the forest where the Germans couldn't see them. "Listen to me." Morrison's voice cut through the chaos. "We're moving into the forest. Stay low. Move quiet. Follow me. Now." He didn't wait for questions, didn't wait for acknowledgement. He started crawling toward the tree line to their left, away from the trail, away from the kill zone. The 11 men followed, because Morrison's voice carried authority, because they had no other plan, because following someone, anyone, was better than dying alone. They crawled through mud and blood, dragged the wounded, moved 20 yards, 30. The German fire was concentrated on the trail, not on the forest edges, not yet. 50 yards into the forest, Morrison found a ravine, deep enough to provide cover, hidden by undergrowth. He slid down into it. The others followed. They lay there, pressed into the muddy earth, listening to the sounds of their company dying. The German fire continued for another 10 minutes, then stopped. Silence descended. Worse than the noise, because silence meant the Germans were moving, clearing the battlefield, finishing the wounded. Morrison counted his men, 11 including himself. Rizzo with the leg wound, Williams with the chest wound, O'Connor blind, 5 others with various injuries ranging from shrapnel to broken bones, 3 relatively uninjured but in shock, 11 men out of 120. He checked their ammunition, maybe 200 rounds total, a few grenades, 1 medic bag carried by a private who'd been killed. O'Connor had grabbed it instinctively. Supplies? Minimal. Water? Some. Food? A few K rations, medical, 1 morphine syringe and some bandages. Position, unknown exactly, but deep in German-held forest. Maybe a mile from friendly lines, maybe more. Hard to tell in Hürtgen, where every direction looked the same. Status, surrounded, outnumbered, outgunned, most of them wounded. Prospects, bleak. Morrison did what sergeants do. He assessed, he planned, he acted. "Williams, how bad?" The corporal removed his hand from his chest. Blood welled up. "Bad, Sarge. I think it got my lung." "O'Connor, can you see anything?" "No, nothing, just black." Morrison's jaw tightened. Williams needed surgery. O'Connor needed a doctor. Both needed help he couldn't provide. "Rizzo?" "Legs messed up, Sarge. I can't walk far." Morrison looked at the others. Most were wounded in some way. Maybe 3 could move effectively. The rest would slow them down or couldn't move at all. He calculated odds. If they tried to move, the mobile ones might make it. Might. The wounded would die or be captured. If they stayed and hid, they might survive long enough for friendly forces to push through. Might. If they tried to fight their way out, they'd die quickly. The choice was brutal. Simple. Impossible. Most sergeants would take the mobile ones and run, leave the wounded. It was logical. It maximized survivors. It was what doctrine suggested when behind enemy lines. Morrison wasn't most sergeants. He'd grown up in Pennsylvania coal country, mining families, where you didn't leave your buddy trapped underground, where you went back for everyone or you didn't come up at all. That code was in his bones. "All right, listen up," Morrison said quietly. His voice was calm, certain. "We're not moving, not yet. We're going to hole up right here, hide, wait for our guys to push through." "Sarge," one of the privates said, "that could take days. We're behind German lines. I know where we are, and I know what I'm doing. We move, we die, we split up, we die, we stay together, stay quiet, stay hidden. We might make it." "Williams can't last days," someone said. "Then we make sure he lasts as long as possible, and we make sure when our guys push through, they find us alive." Morrison's certainty infected the others. They needed someone to believe in, someone to follow. He would be that person. "First things first. We need to make this ravine invisible. Gather branches, leaves, anything that'll hide us from above. Move quiet, move slow. Germans will be sweeping the area." The men who could move started gathering camouflage. The wounded stayed still. Morrison organized, directed, turned the ravine into a hide site. Within an hour, they were invisible from more than 10 feet away. A roof of branches overhead, muddy walls. 11 men in a hole in the ground in the middle of German-controlled forest. Morrison posted a watch rotation. 2 men awake at all times. Everyone else rest. Conserve energy. Stay silent. Then he took stock of reality. They had minimal food, minimal water, minimal medical supplies. Cold rain continued to fall. Temperature dropping, no fire, smoke would give them away, no movement, sound would give them away. They had to survive on nothing. While wounded men slowly bled or went septic or froze, the odds were impossible. Morrison had never backed down from impossible odds before. He wasn't about to start now. The first night was when Morrison learned the difference between fear and terror. Fear was what you felt going into combat, adrenaline, nerves, the knowledge that you might die but also might survive. It had edges, boundaries. Terror was lying in a muddy ravine in enemy territory, listening to German voices 20 feet away, knowing that if they found you, everyone died. Terror had no edges, just endless black depth. The German patrol passed at 2100 hours. Morrison heard them before he saw them. Voices speaking German. Casual, relaxed. These weren't soldiers searching, just moving through their own territory. Morrison pressed himself into the mud, made himself small. The other men did the same. Williams was unconscious, blessing and curse. He couldn't make noise, but his breathing was wet, labored. If these Germans got close enough, they'd hear it. The voices came closer, boots squelching in mud. Someone laughed, a mundane sound, surreal in its normalcy. Morrison's hand went to his knife. If they were discovered, he'd go silent, take out the closest Germans before they could raise alarm, give his men a chance to scatter. It wasn't much of a plan. It was the only plan. 10 feet away, Morrison could see shadows through the camouflage, German helmets, rifles. 5 feet away, one of Morrison's men, Private Jensen, started shaking. Not fear shaking, cold shaking. Hypothermia setting in. His teeth wanted to chatter. Morrison saw it, reached over, pressed his hand over Jensen's mouth, applied pressure. Jensen's eyes went wide, understood, forced himself still. The Germans stopped, directly above the ravine. Morrison heard the click of a lighter, smelled tobacco. They were smoking, right there, right above 11 American soldiers. Seconds stretched into centuries. Morrison counted his own heartbeats. Steady. Slow. He'd learned to control it, to stay calm when calm was impossible. One of the Germans said something. The others laughed, then they moved on. Boots fading. Voices diminishing. Gone. Morrison waited 5 more minutes, then slowly removed his hand from Jensen's mouth. "Thank you, Sarge," Jensen whispered, barely audible. Morrison nodded, said nothing, but the message was clear. They'd survived the first close call. There would be more. At midnight, Williams woke up, confused, in pain. He tried to sit up. Morrison gently pushed him back down. Easy, you're wounded. Stay still. Where are we? Hidden. We're safe for now. Williams coughed. Blood came up. Bad sign. His lung was filling with fluid. Without treatment, he had days at most, maybe less. Sarge, I need to tell you something. Save your strength. No, listen. Williams grabbed Morrison's jacket with surprising strength. If I don't make it, there's a letter in my jacket pocket. For my wife. Make sure she gets it. You'll give it to her yourself. Don't. Williams' voice was firm despite the pain. Don't lie to me. I know what a sucking chest wound feels like. I'm dying. We both know it. Morrison met his eyes, saw certainty there. Acceptance. All right, I'll make sure she gets it. Williams relaxed. Thank you. He coughed again. How bad is our situation? Bad, but not hopeless. How many of us left? 11? Williams processed this. 120 down to 11. His face showed the math, the grief. Captain Hayes? Dead. Lieutenant Parker, too. I'm senior man now. Then we're lucky. You're the best NCO in the company. Williams managed a weak smile. If anyone can get us out, it's you. Morrison didn't feel lucky, didn't feel capable. He felt like a man desperately trying to hold water in a sieve, but he couldn't show doubt. Leaders didn't have the luxury of doubt. Get some rest. We'll move when it's safe. Williams nodded, closed his eyes, drifted back into unconsciousness. Morrison checked the others. O'Connor was awake, sitting against the ravine wall, hands exploring his face, touching the bandages over his eyes. How you doing, Danny? I can't see, Sarge. I can't see anything. I know. The medic said there was an explosion, shrapnel near your eyes. Will it come back? My sight? Morrison had no idea. The wounds looked bad, but he wasn't a doctor. I don't know, but we're going to get you to a hospital. They'll fix you up. O'Connor laughed bitterly. We're surrounded by Germans in the middle of the worst forest on Earth. How exactly are we getting to a hospital? One step at a time. First step is staying alive. Second step is staying hidden. Third step is waiting for our guys to push through. We do those three things, we'll make it. You really believe that? I have to. O'Connor was quiet for a moment. I'm scared, Sarge. Me too, kid. Me too. The admission helped. O'Connor relaxed slightly. Fear shared was fear divided. Day 2 came with more freezing rain. The temperature hovered just above freezing. Cold enough to be miserable. Not cold enough to kill quickly. Just slowly. Morrison rationed the food. 1 K ration split among 11 men. It was nothing. Barely a mouthful each. But it was something. Water was easier. Rain collected in their helmets. It tasted like metal and mud, but it was drinkable. They wouldn't die of thirst. Rizzo's leg wound was getting worse. The bullet had missed the bone, but torn through muscle. Without antibiotics, infection was inevitable. By noon on day 2, the wound was red, swollen, hot to the touch. Sarge, it hurts bad. I know, we're going to clean it, rebandage it. You got anything for the pain? Morrison pulled out the morphine syringe. 1 dose, single use. He could give it to Rizzo now, ease his pain, but then it would be gone, and Williams might need it more, or someone else might get wounded. 1 dose, 11 men, some already in agony, others potentially needing it. The math was impossible. Not yet, Morrison said. I'm saving it for when we really need it. Rizzo nodded, understood, didn't complain, just bit down on a stick while Morrison cleaned the wound with rainwater, screamed silently through clenched teeth. At 1400 hours, they heard artillery, American artillery, thundering in from the west, the sound of the offensive pushing forward. Hope surged. Their lines were advancing. Maybe the forest would be cleared. Maybe rescue was coming. The artillery barrage lasted 30 minutes, then silence. Then the sound of small arms fire. Distant, maybe a mile away, hard to tell in Hürtgen where sound did strange things. The battle moved north, away from them. The offensive was happening, but not in their sector, not yet. Hope faded back to grim reality. How long we gonna wait, Sarge? Private Torres asked, one of the 3 relatively uninjured men. Long as it takes. Williams ain't gonna last long as it takes. Then we make sure he lasts as long as possible. Why? Why not take those of us who can move and make a run for it? Morrison turned to Torres. His voice went flat, hard. Because we don't leave our brothers behind. That's not who we are. But if we all die here, at least we die together, as a unit, with honor. Now drop it." Torres backed down. Morrison's authority wasn't from rank, it was from something deeper, the certainty in his voice, the absolute conviction that his way was the only way. Day 3 brought worse weather. The temperature dropped, the rain turned to sleet, hypothermia became a real threat. Morrison organized a rotation. Men huddled together in groups of 3, shared body heat, rotated positions so everyone got time in the middle where it was warmest. Williams was fading. His breathing was shallow, wet. His skin was pale, cold. He drifted in and out of consciousness. During one lucid moment, he asked, "Sarge, you gonna make it?" "We all are." Williams shook his head slightly. "No, I mean, you specifically. You got someone waiting for you?" Morrison thought about Sarah, the girl he'd been writing to. They'd met briefly before he shipped out, corresponded for 2 years, planned to marry when he got home. If he got home. "Yeah, I got someone." "Good. Make sure you get back to her. Don't do anything stupid trying to save all of us." "Sam, I'm not leaving anyone." "I know. That's what makes you dangerous to yourself." Williams coughed, winced. "Promise me something." "What?" "If it comes down to saving me or saving someone who's got a real chance, don't pick me. Pick them." Morrison didn't answer. "Promise me, Sarge." "I can't promise that." "Then you're a fool." But Williams smiled when he said it, respect in his eyes. A noble fool, but still a fool. On day 4, a German patrol set up a position 50 yards from their ravine. Morrison heard them digging in, setting up a machine gun nest. They were there for hours. 11 Americans stayed absolutely silent, absolutely still. Morrison passed the word in hand signals. No movement, no sound, not even breathing hard. O'Connor, blind, couldn't see the signals. Morrison touched his arm, placed O'Connor's hand on his own chest so the kid could feel his breathing. Slow, steady, controlled. O'Connor matched it, understood. For 6 hours, they were statues. 11 men frozen in place while German soldiers worked and talked and lived 50 yards away. Morrison's legs cramped. His back screamed. He ignored it. Discomfort was nothing. Discovery was death. Finally, as darkness fell, the German patrol moved out. Whatever they'd been guarding or watching for, they'd finished. The Americans slowly, carefully, allowed themselves to move again, stretched cramped muscles, drank water, ate tiny portions of their dwindling rations. "How much food we got left, Sarge?" Rizzo asked. Morrison counted. 2K rations for 11 men. Maybe one more day if they stretched. "Enough," he lied. By day 5, Williams was dying. Everyone knew it. Williams knew it. His breathing was labored. His consciousness came and went. The wet sound in his chest had gotten worse. Morrison sat with him in the pre-dawn darkness, held his hand, the way he'd held his father's hand when the old man died of black lung. "Sarge," Williams whispered, "tell my wife. Tell her I wasn't scared." "You weren't." "Liar." Williams managed a ghost of a smile, but a kind one. "You were brave, Sam. Braver than most. You held on, fought. That's all anyone can ask. Did we do it right? The company. Did we do our job?" Morrison thought about Charlie Company, 120 men who'd walked into an ambush, who'd been cut down in minutes. It felt like failure, like waste. But then he thought about the 11 men around him, still alive, still fighting, still refusing to quit. "Yeah, we did it right. We're still here, still fighting. That's what matters." Williams nodded. Satisfied. "Good." He died 20 minutes later, quietly, without drama, just stopped breathing. Morrison closed Williams's eyes, took the letter from his jacket pocket, put it in his own pocket, a promise to keep. 10 men left. At 0900 hours on day 5, they heard American voices, not distant artillery, not the sound of battle, actual voices, speaking English, calling out in American accents, a patrol, sweeping through the forest, looking for survivors. Morrison's heart pounded. This was it, rescue, or a trap. He had to decide fast. "Stay here," he whispered to his men. "I'm going to check." "Sarge," Rizzo started. "Stay." Morrison crawled out of the ravine, moved slowly, carefully, toward the voices, his rifle ready. If this was Germans impersonating Americans, a tactic they'd used before, he'd know quickly. He got within 30 yards, saw American uniforms, recognized the insignia. 110th Regiment, his own unit, follow-on forces that had pushed through. "Over here," Morrison called out. "American soldiers! Wounded! Don't shoot!" The patrol spun toward his voice, weapons raised, a lieutenant at the front. "Identify yourself." "Sergeant Jack Morrison, Charlie Company, 2nd Platoon. We got caught in the ambush 5 days ago. 10 survivors, most wounded. We need medics." The lieutenant's eyes went wide. "Charlie Company? Jesus Christ, we thought everyone was dead." "Not everyone. Not yet. You got medics?" Yeah, we got medics. Where are your men?" Morrison led them to the ravine. The medics swarmed in immediately. Professional, efficient. They assessed the wounded, started treatment, called for litters. Rizzo was crying. "We made it, Sarge. We actually made it." O'Connor, blind, reached out, found Morrison's arm, held it. "You did it. You kept us alive." Torres, who'd questioned staying, who'd wanted to run, looked at Morrison with something like awe. "How'd you know? How'd you know we'd make it?" Morrison didn't have an answer. The truth was he hadn't known. He'd just refused to accept any other outcome. The evacuation took an hour. 10 men carried out on litters. Morrison walked out under his own power, the last to leave. As they moved toward friendly lines, the lieutenant walked beside him. "Sergeant, you've been behind enemy lines for 5 days, with wounded men, no supplies. How the hell did you survive?" Morrison thought about Williams dying in his arms, about O'Connor going blind, about Rizzo's infected leg, about sitting absolutely still while Germans smoked cigarettes 10 feet away. "We stayed quiet, stayed hidden, and refused to quit." The lieutenant shook his head. "That's the most incredible thing I've heard all war." "It's what you do," Morrison said simply. "You take care of your men, no matter what." They reached the aid station. Real doctors, real medicine, hot food, warm blankets, safety. Morrison watched his men being treated, saw them smile for the first time in days, saw hope return to eyes that had been dead. 10 men out of 120, but 10 who wouldn't have survived without him. That was enough. That had to be enough. The aid station was chaos. When Morrison's 10 survivors arrived, men who'd survived 5 days behind enemy lines, the medical staff stopped and stared. The chief medical officer examined O'Connor. "The optic nerves are damaged. The blindness is permanent." Morrison gripped O'Connor's shoulder. "We deal with it, one step at a time." Rizzo's leg infection had spread. "We need to amputate below the knee," the doctor said. "Otherwise, sepsis kills him." Morrison knelt beside Rizzo. "You're alive. That's what matters. Lose the leg, get a prosthetic, go home, live." Rizzo stared at him, nodded. "Okay." The surgery happened within an hour. Rizzo survived. The other wounded were stabilized. Morrison was examined. Mild hypothermia, trench foot, exhaustion. But alive. That night, Morrison pulled out Williams's letter. He wrote to Mrs. Williams telling her that her husband had been brave, had died without suffering. Some lies were kind. 3 days later, a chaplain found him. "Your men are recovering. All 10 are going to make it." Morrison exhaled. Not all. Williams was gone, and 100 others. But 10 had lived because he'd refused to leave them. Morrison was awarded the Silver Star. He accepted it because refusing would dishonor his men. But he never felt like a hero. He returned to duty in December, fought through Germany, saw the war end in May 1945. He mustered out in October, returned to Pennsylvania, married Sarah in 1946. She understood the nightmares, the moments when he'd drift back to that ravine. They had 3 children. Morrison taught them about responsibility, about taking care of others, about doing what's right even when it costs you. Letters came from his men. Rizzo learned to walk with a prosthetic, worked at his uncle's restaurant, getting married. O'Connor learned Braille, studying to teach other blind people. The others built normal lives made possible by 5 abnormal days. In 1955, Rizzo organized a reunion. 10 survivors gathered in Brooklyn, older now, grayer, but alive. Torres spoke first. "Sarge, I was wrong in that ravine. You were right to stay. If we'd split up, most of us would be dead." O'Connor found Morrison by sound. "You gave me my life. I'm blind, but I'm alive. I have a job, friends, a future. Thank you." Rizzo raised a beer. "To Sergeant Morrison, who refused to leave us behind. "Why'd you stay?" someone asked. "You could have made it out alone." Morrison thought about his father, the coal mines, the code. You don't leave a man underground. You were my men. My responsibility. I couldn't be the man who abandoned wounded soldiers to save himself. "That's called honor," Torres said quietly. They stayed in touch. Annual reunions, phone calls. The bond never broke. Morrison retired from the mines in 1978, volunteered at the VFW, talked to young soldiers about leadership, about responsibility, about the choices that define you. He never glorified combat, told them the truth. War was chaos. Survival was often random. The best you could do was take care of your men, stay with them. That was the only honor in it. In 1994, 6 survivors gathered for the 50th anniversary. 4 had died, age and illness. 50 years, Rizzo said, and I still remember every detail. The cold, the fear, Williams dying. "Me too," O'Connor agreed. Every moment. They raised glasses to Williams, to Sullivan, to Charlie Company, to the impossible odds. Jack Morrison died in 2001 at age 85. Heart failure. Quick, peaceful. 4 old men traveled to his funeral, the last survivors of the ravine. Rizzo spoke at the service. Jack Morrison taught us what leadership means: sacrifice, staying when leaving would be easier, choosing your men over yourself. He paused, wiped his eyes. We're alive because he made that choice. Our children exist because of that choice. Our grandchildren exist because of that choice. All the joy we've had these past 57 years exists because one man refused to abandon us. O'Connor spoke next, still blind after 57 years. "I've lived 6 decades in darkness, and every day I've been grateful, because it means I lived. Jack Morrison gave me that." Morrison's legacy wasn't in history books. It was in 4 old men who shouldn't have survived but did. In their children, 17 total. In their grandchildren, 32. In the great-grandchildren starting to arrive, dozens of lives, hundreds of futures, all from one choice made in a muddy ravine in November 1944. That's the measure of a leader. Not battles won, not medals earned, but people saved, futures protected, 10 men lived, 10 futures, dozens of descendants, all because one man refused to abandon his brothers. Jack Morrison understood something fundamental, that we owe each other loyalty, that brotherhood matters more than survival, that some choices define who you are forever. He proved it in 5 days in hell, with 10 wounded men who had no right to survive. Because one sergeant stayed. That lesson endures beyond medals, beyond memories, beyond everyone who was there. The lesson is simple. You don't leave your brothers behind. Not when it's hard. Not when it costs everything. Not ever. That's what Jack Morrison taught. In 5 days. In hell with 10 dying men because one sergeant refused to quit.